Hello everyone, and welcome to our review on a few key features in Design Manager that allow an accounting professional to retrieve the information they need, adjust certain accounting configurations, and input basic entries without having intimate knowledge of the entire program. Now, as many of you work in both Design Manager Cloud and Design Manager Professional Cloud, or both, I'll show how to access the features in both of those platforms. Now note, however, that some features may only be available in one platform or the other. So let's get started. Now, one of the first things you may want to do when you have a new client and using Design Manager Cloud is reconfigure the chart of accounts. Let's see how to do so. In Design Manager Cloud, we're going to go to Glossaries, Accounts, and then we can see our account glossary. For the professional users, you would go under your Accounting tab, under the General Ledger frame, and click the Accounts button. And there's the account glossary in that platform. Let's say you wanted to create a new account. Let's say perhaps there's a savings account that you wanted to create. Very simple. Just click the Add button as indicated by the green plus sign, which gets us to our account window. And in Design Manager, all accounts take a 5-digit numeric value. And generally, in accrual accounting, the asset accounts, which a savings account, of course, would begin with a 1. So let's input a unique account number. And for the name, we'll simply call it savings account. All we have to do now is select the appropriate account type. Now notice, for assets, there are two types. There's asset, and then there's a secondary option of asset bank checking. It's this specialized version of the asset that allows you to be able to deposit funds into this account, to use it to write checks or otherwise indicate payment out of that account, and even reconcile it as the bank statements come in. And similarly, for liabilities, there's a standard liability account, and there's also a liability credit card account. That designation would allow you to indicate the account is being used as a credit card account to pay vendor deposits, invoices, operating expenses, and also to reconcile and review your credit card as well. So we'll go ahead and simply select Asset Bank Checking, and when we do, a few extra fields arise, such as the bank number and checking number, which are entirely optional. They're not actually linked to any banking institution in any means. And if we click OK, we have our savings account created very easily. And by default, we can see that our account glossary is sorted in that numeric order, going from our 10,000s all the way down to our 6 or 70,000s. And if I wanted to jump down to, say, my revenue accounts, I could simply hit the 4 on my keyboard, and right away I'm going to jump into the 40,000 range. And notice I know we're sorted by account number because I can see the arrows at the column heading indicated pointing to the right. That means I'm sorted by account number in ascending order. If I click that column heading again, I'm now sorted in descending order. And I can sort other columns the same way. If I wanted to sort by account name, I just click the column heading. I can see the arrows indicating that's the column I'm being sorted by. And if I wanted to jump down to, say, commissions, I can just start typing, and there we go. And you could even sort by account type as well. So any of the grids in Design Manager allow you to sort and search very easily. Now, we added an account. I can certainly make changes to an account. Perhaps our checking account is no longer with Bank of America. It's now with Wells Fargo. I could simply edit the account and notice that the edit button is surrounded in a bit of a bold frame. That indicates that is the default or the active key. So if I just hit the enter on my keyboard, I'm going to execute that edit command. I could also, of course, just click the button itself, or I could double click the entry as well, all of which bring me to the account that I'm trying to edit. And we can change our name from Bank of America to Wells Fargo. If I wanted to use the spell check, notice the spell check button is highlighted, and I can simply click on it to check my spelling as well. Click OK, and I'll save my changes. If I click Cancel, or the X in the top right corner, I would not save any changes I made. So if you want to save the record, be sure to hit OK. If you don't want to save it, or if you're just reviewing information and you don't want to inadvertently make changes, always hit the cancel button. Likewise, perhaps there's an account that I simply no longer wish to use. I can delete the account as well. When deleting, anything in Design Manager will always be prompted to ensure that you truly want to execute the delete. And by clicking yes, our account for our savings account is removed. But let's imagine we wanted to get rid of our checking account. Rather than renaming it, we wanted a new one for our Wells Fargo. If I attempted to delete that account, I'm immediately warned that there's an activity associated with the account somewhere throughout the software, and Design Manager would force me to first transfer that activity to an existing or a brand new account. So there is a degree of checks and balances, of course, in Design Manager, so you don't inadvertently delete information that you do not want to. Another feature is the Balances button right on the Account Glossary window. You can select the Account Balances button, and you'll see each of the month's current balance for the current year and prior year as well. Now for our professional users, let's jump over to that platform. There's a few additional features. First, for all of your income statement accounts, in other words, your revenue or sales, cost of goods, and operating expense accounts, you can have a department or departmentalize those accounts. So if a particular firm has multiple lines of business or revenue streams, you may want to have departments for commercial design, residential design, perhaps architectural, or even a showroom. They could all be departments, and you could have accounts that are use the department code feature in Design Manager, and you can run your income statement based upon a certain department. You can also budget all of those income statement accounts. So I could input the desired year, and I could even distribute a budget. Let's say accessories, I want to shoot for perhaps 50,000 over the year, and Design Manager will distribute those budgets for us. And again, as we'll see shortly, you can use the budget feature when you're reviewing your income statement, etc. Another feature in the professional platform is the close as of end of fiscal month. This allows you to indicate that an account has been closed as of a certain fiscal period, and no activity can be entered after that fiscal period. So this allows you to not delete an account because you want to maintain it for historical reference, but it'll prevent you from adding any new information into that account. So the professional platform does have a few more advanced features for those larger firms. Speaking of some account settings, there are some overall or company-wide settings that can be configured for your Design Manager users, and most of that is done on the company information window. Let's jump back to the Design Manager Cloud, and to access that window, you go to your File drop-down and select Company Settings. And for our professional users, similarly, also click File and click the Company Information and Settings window. And you can see on the professional platform, there are a few more options here, of course. Now on that company information window, we have a few pertinent tabs for accounting information. First, we have our default sales or revenue accounts. These are the accounts that, depending on the component type designated for the good or service, which account will be used when we ultimately invoice the client. These will also be overridden if the user inputs what we call a sales category, which can override or supersede these default accounts. And very similarly to the sales accounts, we have default cost of goods sold accounts, and we have another tab for other accounts. These are very specialized accounts in Design Manager for very particular purposes. So we have an account for vendor deposits, vendor discounts, of course accounts payable and work in process. On the receivable side of things, we have an accounts receivable account, an undeposited funds account if the company chooses to use that feature, along with client deposits. And then we have retained earnings and suspense as well. Now, if you want to change those accounts, I always suggest to do so right at the inception of Design Manager. Changing any of the other accounts in particular may have unwanted effects if you do so after the user has been practicing and utilizing Design Manager for any length of time. If you find yourself wanting to do so, always contact our technical support team at support@designmanager.com, and they'd be happy to work with you. Another area is our close fiscal year. In Design Manager Cloud, this allows us to input a year into which or before which we can't access or alter any fiscal information. So if I have gone and filed my income taxes for, let's say, 2016, I could input that into my last close year. That way I'm ensuring that the user won't come along and perhaps void checks or credit invoices into that year or input cash receipts into 2016. It allows us to maintain the integrity of that year to ensure that our Design Manager counting matches the information that we use to file taxes precisely. In the professional platform, we also have our sales and cost of goods sold default accounts, our other accounts, and we have another area for fiscal month, and we can see there's a few additional functions here. First, we designate the current fiscal month. The professional platform allows you to designate the current fiscal period if the user or the client does not have a calendar year end, and that's indicated here. We also have the ability to close fiscal months themselves in the professional platform. So once all the data entry has been performed for a given fiscal period and I've done all of my review and running of my reports, I can close my accounts receivable, for example, and doing so for last month would prevent me from inputting any client invoices, crediting client invoice adjustments, cash receipts, and those types of functions. Similarly, I can do the same for accounts payable functions, which would be entering in vendor invoices, operating expense, vendor deposits, voiding or editing those transactions, writing and voiding in checks, etc. So I could set that to the last month as well. And finally, I can do so for general ledger functions as well, which is predominantly entering and editing of journal entries. There are a few other options along the right-hand side where you can designate whether or not to allow users to enter a transaction against a checking account that's prior to the calendar date of the last cash reconciliation. In other words, it goes a little against common sense that I'd be entering in a cash receipt into a calendar date when I've already reconciled that calendar date. So obviously we have that option defaulted to be not selected. And similarly, we have the ability to allow users to unclear checkbook and credit card entries, and then we can determine how we want our default fiscal months to appear. As I said, the professional platform posts on a fiscal month setting, and I can either default it to the current fiscal month indicated below, or I could do 1 plus the current closed fiscal month. So if I'm always closing my months, the moment I do so, then my default will be 1 plus that closed month. So it really maintains myself a perfect integrity, so I'm not cross-posting into various fiscal periods. Great, so those are some of the features that you can implement to really maintain control over how the user is inputting information into Design Manager, particularly fiscal information, of course. Let's move on to journal entries. Of course, you're going to want to input journal entries at the end of the fiscal year, perhaps at the end of tax time. We may want to put in our depreciation, etc. To access journal entries in Design Manager Cloud, we go to our Documents and Accounting window and select our Journal Entries and Miscellaneous Cash Receipt tab. Let's imagine that we want to create a new one. Perhaps we'll do a owner's draw. So I can either right-click on my General Ledger Journal Entries folder and select New Journal Entry, or I can just click the Journal Entry button in the top right corner of that window. Either way, it brings me to the Journal Entry window itself. Now, Design Manager is going to default a unique entry number for you, but you could certainly change that to something a little bit more indicative of the entry itself. Perhaps this might be owner draw. The entry date, we can use today's date, and I can put dates in Design Manager in a few different ways. One, I can use the calendar search, which brings up the current month along with the previous and future month, where I can select a particular date, or I could just click choose to put in today's date. Another feature of the dates in Design Manager is I don't need to input any slashes, dashes, etc. I could simply type in the month, space, then the date, and if it's the current year, I don't even need to put a year designation in. I would only need to enter the year if I was putting into the future or past. So if I leave our entry date set at 7/12 and I simply tab through that field, Design Manager will recognize it as July 12th of this year and format the date as such. Description or transaction descriptions are entirely optional. I am a large advocate of them, for they give me a little bit of information to indicate what I was doing when I'm trying to research information weeks, months, or even years prior. So this simply could be owner's draw. And now we just have to put in the accounts and the amount to which we're going to affect. And we do so again by clicking on the add button as indicated by the green plus sign. If you don't see the word add, simply look for the green plus sign, and that's going to be your entry button. That gets us to our journal entry distribution window. Now we can input our account. If we know the accounts we want to affect with our draws, we can simply input it directly. So imagine that we're coming out of cash. And of course I'd be crediting that. Let's say it's $1,500. And notice as I enter in either a debit or credit amount, the net debits and credits on the right-hand side are listing that total for me conveniently. Of course, we need at least 2 accounts on our journal entry. So I can go ahead and click the OK Add button in this case. Doing so is going to save my distribution for the checking account, yet keep my window up so that we can input our subsequent accounts. If I want to get to the owner's draw account, I can click on my search button, hit Alt-S. I've sorted it by account name, started typing owner's draw, and I can jump right down to the appropriate equity account. Put in our $1,500 as a debit, and now if we click OK, I'm going to save and close the distribution window, returning me to the journal entry window itself, and we can see both accounts listed. There's also the option to auto-reverse a journal entry. So perhaps I am going to input, let's say, imagine at the end of the tax year, I want to convert Design Manager over to a cash basis for tax purposes. Notice I say convert over. Design Manager is fully accrual, as most of you know. So if you wanted to record on cash, you'd have to make the necessary journal entries to do so. But if I want to return those accounts to their natural state at the beginning of the next fiscal year, I could use the auto reverse feature. Or if I'm doing other transactions like accruing cost of goods sold, etc. Click OK, and there's our journal entry very easily listed for us. For the professional users, you would stay on your accounting tab within your general ledger frame and click the journal entries button. And here notice I've already created an owner's draw transaction, but I simply haven't yet posted it. So if I edit this transaction, I can say I put in my entry number, which is I used a little different configuration on the professional platform, the date, transaction description, etc. The professional platform is a batch posting system, so I can make all of my entries, come back, add some more, review them, etc., and they'll not actually be recorded into the general ledger until I truly post them. So at this point, I can continue to add, I can make changes, I can delete transactions off of my posting list. I could create a journal. In fact, in the professional platform, you can even require users to input the journal, to create a journal prior to posting any transactions. Here is our journal entry posting. And there it is. And this is one of our standard posting lists. So we can see make this a little bit bigger. We could see our journal entry and all journal entries listed, of course, if we had more than one, all the pertinent information, journal entry number, date, description, accounts being affected, and then a very convenient account summary at the bottom as well. And for our pro users, we always have to post, and we're going to be warned into which fiscal period we'd like to do so. Click OK. I clear all of the entries off of my posting list, and now I can see them on my existing tab of the journal entry window. One more feature on the Pro platform before we go over to our reporting is the Professional platform also has recurring journal entries. Now say you do particular journal entries time and time again. If all the employees are salaried, you might do your payroll input as a journal entry, and that would be a very fixed journal entry. Or even some options for any tax-based information, etc. So you can create recurring journal entries, which you can then access and easily input each time. So if I have a 401k matching program at the firm, I may have my recurring journal set up so I don't have to input it manually each time. All I have to do is select or tag it, click choose, and that brings it right into my new tab for me. I can make any changes as necessary. It's going to default to today's date. I could put that into last month, or if there are any subtle changes in the amounts, I can make those changes as well. And then just like any other journal entry, once I'm happy with it on my new or posting tab, I can truly process it into the general ledger by posting. And again, now it's over on our existing tab. So I wanted to also show the recurring journal entries for our professional users. Okay, now let's get into some of the reporting capabilities of Design Manager. Obviously, you're going to want to pull out the various reports that are going to be necessary for your work as the accounting professional. Let's jump over to the Design Manager platform, and you can see we have our report window. One ability in Design Manager is the ability to craft favorite reports. Now, if you're using one of Design Manager's free accountant licenses, you actually have your own access to the user's Design Manager and can craft your own set of favorite reports. I don't have any listed right now, but you could even get very specific or very elaborate in how you want to have your reports categorized. I may have a need for just, hey, I want to have all my monthly reports in one easy, quick to find area. So I could do a new folder for monthly reports. And then I have a subfolder right on my favorites. And then I could start adding reports into that folder. Perhaps I want to put my accounts receivable report in there, perhaps my open client deposit report, and you can see they're accumulating in our monthly reports. So once you find the reports that are necessary for you, or ones that you need to truly get the information out for your accounting needs, add them to your favorite reports so you can access them quickly. Or even moreover, you could contact the user and say, hey, can you please print me an open client deposit report? And they can then access it from your favorites list as well. Now, Design Manager technical support, we always try to promote 5 monthly reports or 5 key reports that, if monitored on a timely basis by the user or the accounting professional, they're really going to ensure that accounting is progressing properly throughout the program. And those 5 reports are as follows. There's 2 under accounts receivable. There's the aged accounts receivable and the open client deposit, which we just attached to our favorites. And there's 3 under the accounts payable. There's the aged accounts payable, open vendor deposit, and the work in process. Now, as you all know, each of those tie to 5 very specific accounts on the balance sheet. So if those reports are run, reviewed each month, or at least on a timely basis by the user, and they're all accurate, you have a fair degree of confidence that the balance sheet itself will be accurate. If the balance sheet itself is accurate, there's a good degree of probability that the income statement will be accurate as well. So we in the Design Manager Technical Support Department really try to enforce the idea of monitoring those 5 reports to ensure that the client's accounting is being processed properly. Now, on those reports, such as the aged accounts receivable, you may see an entry that's incorrect. Perhaps a client's balance should have been cleaned up, or some funds were refunded to the client based upon returned goods. Now, it becomes very natural to want to correct that report via journal entry. And of course you can. You could put a journal entry in to reduce the accounts receivable account and reduce some other revenue or bad debt account or something along those lines. But doing so does not actually affect the report itself. Yes, it's affecting the accounts receivable account directly, but it's leaving those errant records on the report itself. So we always recommend to have someone at the office themselves print the report out, see what transactions are causing the problems, and actually correct the transactions themselves. Credit the invoice, adjust the invoice appropriately, so the report maintains the proper integrity, and as such, the transaction itself will make the account balance as desired, all at the same time. And that allows them to work with our technical support department to achieve that goal. And besides all of the 5 monthly reports that we highly recommend and enforce with our users, you're going to want to have your financial statements, of course. And they're all listed under the General Ledger folder, and they have a subfolder for financial statements. And we have our balance sheet, we have the cash flow statement, and we have a variety of different formats for the income statement. Let's take a look at the balance sheet. When running the report, first we have the date for which we want to run the balance sheet. It's always going to default to the end of the current fiscal month. We have options to show the prior year information if desired. We have another option to show the timestamp. What that will do is show the exact date and moment in time that the report was printed. So if we have a balance sheet that we, for let's say the end of last fiscal year, that we ran in April of this fiscal year, and we run it again currently or today, we know, and there's differences between those two balance sheets for the end of last year, we know that some data was input between the timestamp on the April version of the report and today's. So it provides you with a very convenient and certainly can be important timestamp or indication of precisely when the version of the report was run. You can suppress zero accounts, so if there's no balance being listed on the account, either in the current year or the prior year, those accounts simply wouldn't be shown on the report, which makes it much more condensed and readable. Then you can see we have layout options. There's a layout selection and a layout button itself. This allows us to hone or customize how we want information to appear on the balance sheet. So if I click the layout button, it brings us to our balance sheet layout window. And I could do several things here. For example, I may want to have my undeposited funds right up underneath my checking account. So I can simply drag it and drop it right beneath our Wells Fargo checking. Perhaps I want to have a subtotal for all of my inventory and work in process. Well, I can do that too. I could add a group, which I may call inventory and WIP. And then I can drag my inventory account into it along with my work in process, and I'll have those accounts grouped and subtotaled right on the balance sheet for us. This allows us to create a total for various accounts. Rather than having sub-accounts, Design Manager allows you to group the accounts together to gain an overall balance for that grouped account while still showing the account detail if desired. And once I've made my changes, I could even name the new format. So I might want to change this from the very common layout 1 to something along the lines of standard format. And there we go. And just by closing the balance sheet layout, going back in, we can see I now have that listed under my layout options. And you can have up to 3 different layouts. Very similarly with the income statement. On the income statement, we have options for monthly income statement, a quarterly income statement, yearly income statement. And we even have a comparative income statement, which allows us to use 2 different date periods to compare how our revenue, cost of goods sold, and operating expenses have changed between those periods. So if I wanted to review perhaps the beginning of the first quarter of last year through the final quarter of last year, I can do so. And just like we have on the balance sheet, if we use our monthly income statement as an example, we have a layout option here as well. So now I can customize how I want my income statement to be arranged. So I may want to have let's look at some of our expense accounts perhaps. Perhaps I want to have a grouping for all of our salary and payroll accounts. I could create a new group for payroll, and I could bring in the appropriate accounts here as well. And I can move my various accounts around just like we did on our balance sheet. Perhaps I want my commissions at the top. I can do so. And I can even rename our income statement as well. Standard layout. Just like that. And then the report format, I could print the income statement with the current month and year-to-date figures. I could put in month, year-to-date budgets and variance, month year-to-date prior year, month year-to-date, budget year-to-date, and even a comparative version here, which will show me the differences between last month's, last year's versus the current month and current years as well. And then just like the balance sheet, we can show our timestamp or suppress zero account, both of which are defaulted to yes. So we have our timestamp and we try to make the income statement as short as possible by suppressing any accounts with no balances in them. And our professional platform, all of the information is very similar. You would stay on your accounting tab and you can actually jump right to your financial statements by clicking the financial statements button under the general ledger frame. And that gets you right into the information. And notice here, rather than having the favorites on a separate tab, we split the reports menu itself into a split screen, and you could put your favorites on just by clicking as such. You could also click the general ledger reports and navigate your way down to the financial statements. From there, the windows are nearly identical. Okay, and with that, to conclude, we went through a variety of necessary features for an accounting professional to input and retrieve information for Design Manager, including managing accounts, closing fiscal months and years, creating journal entries, along with some of the reporting features in Design Manager, particularly the recommended 5 monthly reports. I showed how to use report favorites, running and configuring your financial statements, etc. And hopefully this discussion can make Design Manager as easy as possible for you to assist all of your Design Manager clients. And I thank you all for joining the discussion today, and I hope you attend another one of our free webinars in the near future. Take care and have a great day.